Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2023. Terry Sweeney with Dark Reading, and joining us now is Patrick Harr, CEO of SlashNext. Patrick, thanks so much for joining the Dark Reading News Desk. Yeah, it's great to be here. Appreciate you doing this. We are talking about how generative AI is changing the threat landscape, and I guess I should add, who isn't talking about that? It's quite a hot topic these days. Let's start. I'm curious your thoughts about how technologies like ChatGPT and similar technologies have been changing the threat landscape over the last few months.
Yeah. So I would say up to even 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, when ChatGPT hit, what's it at, 100 million users? I don't know exactly the number. But up to that point, we saw a significant increase in our side, phishing attempts, right? Phishing attempts, scams through text, credential harvesting. And literally in the last 6 weeks, we've seen a dramatic increase, even more so, because of ChatGPT. And the real kind of danger, there's great things, but the real danger is it's lowered almost the barrier to zero for anyone on the planet to be a threat actor. And so this means that if I'm a 12-year-old, an 80-year-old, I just simply put a prompt in, create an attack, and launch it.
We've been hearing a lot of different ways that ChatGPT and other generative AI can be used for malicious purposes. Talk about the ones that you think maybe pose the biggest threats.
So certainly you can write malicious code, and I think there's going to be some very advanced polymorphic type of attacks and malware. But I almost like to say the weakest link in security right now is humans. Right? It's the interaction.
Always.
So think about what does ChatGPT do? It emulates a human. Right? Spoken language right now with ChatGPT 4, it's all about voice and video. So if you combine all three, you're now emulating the human emotion. And so if you look at the kind of security ramifications of what that means in terms of fraud, in terms of scams, in terms of what's called business email compromise, not only it lowers the barrier, but now I can create perfect English type of emails, right? We all got trained, look at the dialect.
Right.
Well, we can't do that anymore, right? I think second, you look at almost what we would call the launch at scale, right? So if I'm not successful in the first attempt, I'm going to change it, relaunch. And through APIs, I can go to GitHub, and I can I can buy a phishing kit, and I can tie it into SendGrid. And so I can launch these things one after another after another. So in many respects, that's the reason why I say in the cyber world, you have to fight AI with AI. And we'll talk a little bit about what we do, but I'm very much of that opinion. You're going to have to use generative AI to fight generative AI.
Well, so let's go there. I can imagine you're fielding lots and lots of frantic calls from customers asking, what are we supposed to do? How can we mitigate this threat? How can we blunt the effectiveness of these super sophisticated attacks?
Yeah. So again, we're getting all these questions now. A, what does it mean for us? B, how's it changing the threat landscape? C, what I would say the most important piece, and I was saying this just a moment ago, you have to fight generative AI with generative AI. It's what I mean by that. You have to have the ability, all good AI models or ML models, you're only as good as your data, right? So one thing that we've done is we use generative AI where we'll take a threat. So as an example, send this PO to this destination. We've all seen these business email compromise type of threats. Or it could be a text message that says, call the CEO immediately. So in that case, we'll take that threat and we'll clone it. We'll spawn thousands of iterations of that same thing. So almost create synthetic data and then go back and train the model.
Okay.
So what that means is I can continually train the model to get smarter and anticipate what that next threat's going to be. So by doing so, when a ChatGPT threat's created, we already know what the next threat is going to come out, if that makes sense. And so that's what we're really counseling customers to do. Make sure, whether it's us or something else, make sure you're fighting generative AI with generative AI.
Well, I mean, that seems to track with the history of the cybersecurity industry, where you have offensive, counteroffensive, offensive, sort of a continuing escalation of that. Yeah. I mean, this feels like a familiar pattern.
Yeah, I hate saying it, this security is all about whack-a-mole. We've all played that game back in the day.
It's not wrong.
It's not, because every new tool, something new is created. The threat actor now using ChatGPT. We somewhat anticipated this a couple of years ago, so we already started seeing these different type of changes. We saw parent, child, grandchild type of attacks that would change 24 or 48 hours. And so we started working on this type of approach in the anticipation that these type of tools this research has been going on for a period of time. And so now I think by taking this approach, we go back to the whack-a-mole. We're going to stop a lot of this. Nothing's foolproof.
Sure.
But it does give that ability to narrow the threat landscape, the attack surface that these companies are looking at. So I can focus on narrow numbers as opposed to this broad threshold.
Anything else you want to say about what SlashNext is doing with regard to these forms of generative AI?
So, when we built the company, we thought of what we call multi-channel messaging security. And so all I really mean by that, you can get compromised in email, but people also get compromised in text messages, on LinkedIn, on WhatsApp, Telegram, pick your poison, even your personal Gmail account. So what we do is we put a protective bubble using generative AI, what we call generative human AI, around that user. So anywhere that user can be messaged, we're going to protect them. So I think it's a pretty novel way to look at, in many respects, I say the reason why we call it human AI, we're kind of augmenting the human, making them superhumans, right, to protect them from the threats.
Terms like AI, generative AI, ChatGPT, these are all getting incorporated into marketing messaging. No surprise there. This has been going on for certainly several RSAs now.
Yeah.
Curious from your perspective, what questions do you think customers should be asking of vendors to determine if their AI capabilities are legitimate, useful, or if they're just maybe checking the box where AI is concerned?
Yeah, is it AI washing or is it real?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's well said.
So I think number one, AI, ML, it's as good as your data. So you do need to ask the questions, how long you've been training your models, where do you have access to the threats? Second, we actually do this in our own product where you can actually see why the threat was stopped. We'll highlight the different areas. So you almost want to be able to visualize how the AI is working as opposed to just trust us. And then you want to talk to other customers that are using it, right? I'm a big fan of proofs in the pudding. And again, being able to see it, B, how long, again, in our case, we've been training our models for about 6 years, mass amounts of data. And that's what's given us ability to detect these things long before someone else. Now with generative AI, anticipate what the next threat will be and do it in a highly accurate way. Right? Our false positive rate is about 1 in 1 million. So get underneath the covers, ask the hard questions, because not all AI is created equal.
Of course.
And you're going to definitely get a lot of generative AI kind of washing right now.
What about the prospect of some sort of regulation or restrictions where generative AI are concerned? Some industry leaders have banded together to suggest that we maybe pause around certain forms of AI. How good is your crystal ball? Do you foresee something like that happening?
Very interesting. So I mentioned I was on Capitol Hill last week. Big topic of discussion right now. So there's a philosophical part of this. So what does it do to impact humanity? There is a lot of big thinking type of aspect that occur. Because in many respects, it could be used as a tool of good. But what's the nefarious side? You also have to understand what are the biases in the model, right? We've all heard about disinformation, misinformation, all these different type of things. And so I do think a pause can be a good thing. I also think regulation is going to have to come to bear to give some guardrails. The only challenge there is who's going to dictate those regulations, right? And I also think you're going to see pockets of different parts of the world where they're going to use it for more controlling, right? As you can imagine, different nation states will use it more as a tool of evil. I hate saying this, as opposed to a tool of good. So coming full circle, I absolutely think we need to really navigate the waters carefully here because the impacts are pretty broad.
Well, thanks for the insight around what's clearly the hottest technology of the last couple of years. Patrick, thanks so much for joining the Dark Reading News Desk today.
No, appreciate you having me.
Thank you. We've been talking with Patrick Harr of SlashNext. This has been Terry Sweeney with the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.